Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the White Belt MMA podcast. It's an absolute pleasure to have on the show today Mike Polvere, the founder and promoter of Cage Titans. They actually have a show on August 27th at the Plymouth Memorial Hall. So, Mike, it's our first time talking. So, how you doing, my man?
I'm doing great, man. I'm just enjoying this beautiful day. Was it 90 degrees out? So I'm trying to get some AC while I talk to you, hang out.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I'm from Massachusetts too, so I understand. I mean, like the 90-degree heat in Massachusetts plus the humidity, it's not a good mix. It's not a good mix.
Where are you in Massachusetts?
Winthrop, Massachusetts.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
I'm down in Plymouth.
There you go. I mean, it's pretty cool to say, like, talk to a fellow, New Englander, Massachusetts, because I can like legit just say where I'm from. Because obviously you know how it is. You're talking to someone from like California. Where you from? Winthrop. Where's that? Just say Boston.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. It's cool. I enjoy it. So cool. So you feel our pain here up in Massachusetts. So you're one of us then. You're one of us.
100%, man. 100%. So yeah, Mike. So again, like I said, it's the first time talking, and one thing I always like doing when I get people on for the first time is know how they got their start in combat sports, right? You know what I mean? Like for some people, they stumble upon it. Other people, they got into it through families. So for you, man, what's your story?
Yeah. So I guess my background would be, growing up, I was kind of always an aggressive kid. Um, I guess you could say I like to fight. Growing up, I mean, and MMA really wasn't around and prominent when I was a kid growing up. So I played traditional sports. I played hockey. That was my number one. I played all that throughout high school. But I definitely like to throw down. So I played hockey for a while after high school, and then basically I found MMA. I was never a guy that just liked to run on a treadmill, or I was never really a weightlifter either. I um I just didn't like to do that type of stuff. So I bought a heavy bag, a speed bag, and I just started hitting the bag in my basement at my house. And before you knew it, I started losing weight, and um, I found a gym, and I fought. But yeah, I guess that's kind of it. I mean, I always was into the sport. I tell the story. Kids don't really know it nowadays, but I guess I would call it a legal stream. That's how it would relate to kids nowadays. My friend, my next door neighbor, when I was growing up, had a black box, which basically stole cable.
Mm.
And whenever there was pay-per-views for the UFC or anything, I'd go to his house and I'd watch it. And basically, that was when I kind of fell in love. And then I was able to get into it later, a little bit later on in life and compete myself. Um, but the Cage Titans piece of that puzzle really came in because, to be quite honest, I've said this 100 times. There's a lot of shitty people involved in the sport. In the early days, people that ripped off fighters, didn't pay fighters. Unfortunately, there's still some of those people in the sport today. But when I fought, I had a promoter who ripped me off and didn't pay me the money he said he was going to pay me, and I had a venue because I was an operations manager at Lombardo's in Randolph,
Mm.
and they said, let's do the fights. Like, you're a fighter. At the time, I was still fighting, and my background's in marketing and sales. And they were like, we don't want to work with these scumbag promoters who aren't paying fighters and giving broken promises and, falsifying information on fighters just to get somebody to agree. You think you're fighting a debut guy and you find out he's a black belt, like bullshit like that was happening in the sport. So, I said, hey, listen, I can do it, and I think we can do it better. To make fights, you don't have to be sleazy and scummy, and just tell the truth and treat guys the way that I wanted to be treated when I was fighting. And that's where Cage Titans kind of started. And we've been doing this for 12 years now.
Yeah, man. Congrats on that, man. And I do have to ask, right? Obviously, for a lot of, I'm gonna ask you two questions, right? So, like you said, you got into the sport to get in shape, and then after that, in terms of the promotion, you got it into, obviously, right the wrongs of like many, other promoters that weren't doing the things right. So, the first question is, right? You got into the sport to get into shape, and then after that, you eventually ended up, taking amateur fights, pro fights. So, I do have to ask you, were there any nerves for that first fight? Even though you were that aggressive kid that liked to fight, were there any nerves? And if so, were people around you kind of like, Mike, what the hell are you doing here? Because like you said at the time, it isn't as popular as it is today. Right now, it's mainstream. Everyone likes MMA, right? But before, there's a little bit of like a stigma to it. So for you, like Were there any nerves, and what were the reactions around, with family and loved ones?
Yeah, I mean, there was definitely some nerves. I was a goalie in hockey, so
Mm-hmm.
I'm used to being by myself, like kind of on an island. Though it's a team sport,
Mm-hmm.
um, when it's all said and done, goalies are a little different breed, and you're on an island by yourself. At the end of the day, though it's a team sport, so I thought I would be able to handle it pretty well,
Mm-hmm.
and I will say I was definitely wrong. I definitely had some, it wasn't necessarily the nerves,
Mm-hmm.
but like, though you might have fought before, have you woke up on a day and said to yourself, I'm getting in a fight today? Like,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of people that might have gotten fights, like, when I got in hockey fights, like, anger's flare and temper's flare, and you just throw down, you don't think about it.
Yeah.
You never kind of go into these situations, or in a bar fight. And necessarily, I'm not saying I was in bar fights, but
Mm-hmm.
something happens and immediately, like, you just react, and the fight breaks out.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever woke up and was like, today I put in 8 weeks of training, I'm going to get into a cage half naked and just shorts in front of X amount of people, and I might get my ass kicked, or I
Mm-hmm.
might kick someone's ass. It's a lot different feeling. And I was nervous, but good nerves. People can react one or two ways. I will tell you this though. Um, my coach always said never envision finishing the fight, and that was probably my biggest mistake in my first fight. Um, I thought I was going to knock this guy out and put him away in the first round, and when that didn't happen, that's when I felt like a flood. Like, oh shit, he didn't go away.
Mm-hmm.
What's my plan B? What's my backup? And in my head, I envision this fairy tale that I'm going to walk in there, knock this guy out, and that's it. So between the first and second round, I remember sitting on the stool, and this kid didn't go away, and I said, "Shit, I don't think I can get up. I think I'm done. I don't have any more energy. It's all sucked." And then I looked outside the cage, and I see friends, family, loved ones, all that screaming for me, and they don't know what's going on in my head. They're just like, "Come on, kick his ass!" And at that moment, I got off that stool and was like, shit, I got to do this. And then the same thing happened between the second and third round in my fight. I was like, damn, he didn't go away again. So that's kind of like the mindset and the nerve piece that I went through as a fighter back when I competed.
Yeah, 100%. Hey, but you eventually ended up getting the W, man. So, like,
Yeah.
I saw your record, man. A good undefeated blemish there, right, in pro and in amateur. But
I will say this: I got out undefeated,
uh,
and I'm not trying to pretend I'm some badass. I had some great fights,
uh,
and by the time I got out of the sport, I was like 30ish,
mm,
and I kind of said, listen, I think at the time I was 4 or 5-0, and I go, now I'm gonna have to start getting into the next upper echelon level of fights,
yeah.
and I might get my ass kicked now,
Mm,
and I think I have more to offer the sport than making a run at this as a fighter. Though I would love it. And
mm,
some guys like Johnny Cupcakes, he helped me get ready for his first fight, and he's still fighting. And I'm kind of
mm,
like, damn, I wish I went that route. But the joy in what I've been able to bring to so many fighters over the year, I think I made the right decision. Because that was kind of the mindset. I was like, 30, 31, I'm just going pro. I don't think I'm gonna. My realistic expectation, I'm not gonna make the UFC. Could I really make a run at it? But I had a venue I was the manager of. I said I can do fights and give these guys an honest opportunity to compete. So that's the road I chose, and I'm glad I did.
yeah, man. And you built honestly one of the, one of, or not, or one of, if not the best, regional promotion in the New England area, Cage Titans, man. So, like, obviously you being a fighter yourself, do you think that kind of helped you in like your plan and evolution to kind of grow this business to where it is now?
100%. Um, I said it earlier. I treat every fighter like I would want to be treated.
Mm-hmm.
I got so many guys that don't ask questions because over the years they know I'm going to do right by them. And I'm it's funny though, like now 12 years later, some guys don't even remember that I was a fighter, or even know I was a fighter. But when I first started, it was like, all right, there was a bunch of business guys getting into MMA, trying to make money off the blood, sweat, and tears of these fighters and then ripping them off.
Mm-hmm.
And I was, in my opinion, I'm one of you guys. Here we are. We see what these guys are doing, just trying to make money off our sport. Like, they're not doing right by the sport because they're just kind of trying to make a quick buck.
Mm.
I'm one of you. I think we can make this happen. Let's do it as a family. Let's do it as a group, a community, and let's do it together. And I think that helped me in the early years because I was a peer. I also could relate to fighters. Like I know what it's like to go through training camp. I know what it's like to miss birthday parties and things you want to do in your personal life. I know what it's like on your significant other when you're training and you're cutting them short. I know what it's like in your real job and you take a day off from your real job, your full-time job because you're so sore from training the night before. I knew all that. And I had the background in marketing and sales that I knew that what was missing was pushing the fighters. These business guys came into the sport, and on the local scene, we're like, here's tickets, guys, go sell tickets and sell at my venue. And it's like, well, what did you do as the promoter? You printed the tickets and make us go sell it? Did you take videos of us? Did you make posters? Did you do that? I tell my famous story. I got a yellow piece of construction paper with a Word document printed on it for my first fight. I went and designed my own poster. Um, so I wanted to give these guys the tools. But the evolution of Cage Titans is this. When I first started, I was a peer. Oh, yeah, Mike fought on the same card as me. Like, I remember Mike, this, that, and the other thing. Then it went to the next level after like 3 or 4 years. It was out of memory. And people were like, oh, yeah, the guy who ran Cage Titans, I think he used to fight. Then it went to the next level, was like, I think somebody said he fought. I don't think he fought. Maybe he fought. Now the days are like, when I say, hey, I fought too, they're like, no way. I never knew that you fought. So that's kind of the evolution in the 12 years. But it's 100% helped me. Even just situations where, I'll go to the back room and talk to the fighter who lost, and I'll have a conversation with them, see how they feel, because everybody's running to the guy who won. I try to take some time out and talk to those guys. John Connor said it to me best, and I never did this, for anything more than just to check on guys. But John Connor's been around the game a lot longer than me, and it was one of his fighters, and he goes, "Mike, you're the only promoter who's ever checked on one of my fighters after he lost." And I was like, "Oh, I didn't even think of that," and that it stuck with me. So yeah, man, I'm long-winded, but I think it's definitely helped. Everybody who's part of Cage Titans is somewhat entrenched, that we, the fighters themselves, from our commentary team, to photographers and things of that nature. Like, we really try to build it with people that are a part of the sport, because they love it, they competed, they trained, they've done something, and I just think it really separates us from the rest, and it gives you that special something that other people that come in can't necessarily duplicate because they haven't been there before.
Yeah, 100%. And you see that with the crowds too, right? Like even like at the Plymouth Memorial Hall, and like you see that the fans that are there, they actually love it and understand the sport, right? And like for you, especially in the Plymouth Memorial Hall, just explain a little bit on why that venue is so good for Cage Titans. Because every time, every highlight, every fight I watch, it just seems that the crowd is just rocking, man.
Yeah, man, you hit the nail on the head. Like, Cage Titans is everything. Could we be what we are if we picked up and put ourselves into a different venue? Maybe, but it's everything that encompasses the entire event of Cage Titans, from the venue to the concession stands to the fighters to the corners of the fans. I really think I fought at Memorial Hall twice. I fought for the last show one promotion did, and they never did a show there again. And then I had that happen the second time I fought there. My last amateur fight was there, and Reality Fighting was doing shows there. And that was their last show they ever did. And then they moved out of town and moved to Connecticut. AFO was my pro debut. Last show at Memorial Hall, never again. So I was kind of like scared because it's the best venue, but my nerves were no one wants to drive down to Plymouth. But second to none, there's no better fight venue for the size of events that a local show does. Like, of course, like TD Garden, like, don't take this out of context. Like, oh, the TD Garden, we're better than TD Garden. No, I mean, for what we do in this sport and the size events that we're putting together, there's no better venue. Because you asked about the fans. Our fans are there to watch fights. They're not there to mingle. And I feel like though casinos are cool, why are casinos cool? Because it's more like you're mingling and you're gambling and you're doing all those things. And it's like, oh yeah, there's fights going on over there. And you might watch your friend fight, and then you go back to mingling and drinking and socializing and gambling or doing whatever you're doing. At Memorial Hall, the fights are going on. You are sitting in your chair, you're watching fights, you're in your seat the whole time, because there's not pockets of areas for people to just kind of go and go around and socialize it. So I think that's the biggest benefit of our crowd. And you can tell by the loudness of the crowd, the intentness in which they watch, because at Cage Titans, at Memorial Hall, you're there to watch fights. And I feel some other venues, you're there to socialize with fights going on in the background. And I think that's our difference.
Yeah, man, that's awesome. That's awesome. And especially now, obviously that we're talking about that, right? Like, the fans, everything, all these events you've ever had. It might be a hard question, right? It might be a broad question for you to answer, right? Because you've had so many events. But if you had to remember that, that one moment as a fight promoter that you're like, that still sticks with you, what is it?
Wow, that's tough. A lot of people, and there's so many different moments. I really couldn't, just say just one. Like, there's so many different reasons why so many different moments mean something to me. Every show there's a moment that's special, and realistically, like every fighter that fights on our card, they're having their moment, which is special. I can't even answer that. I'm trying to like rack my brain as I'm stalling and trying to find the words. I mean, I guess I'm gonna have to say this, and don't cut this and show my wife, because she's gonna be like, "Well, you said I guess you have to say this." I did propose to my wife inside the cage at intermission. So I guess you would say that's a personal moment. But just every show, being able to set up that place and see the looks on the fans' faces, the fighters' faces, all that, like every moment is really special. Like there really isn't one that stands out more than another. I'm just being quite honest, and I'm not trying to be diplomatic. It's just every show is amazing for one reason or not. And so many people had special moments. In the early days, I had the chance to see friends compete that I was a lot closer to. Now, we had a chance with a guy that was 59 years old who got his first victory a couple shows ago. How special is that? We've had guys that gone on to the UFC. Like we had a guy who recovered from cancer, and it was like one of his, after he recovered, one of his big things was to compete in the sport. That's a beautiful moment. We've had brothers fight. We've had fathers and son fight on the same card. We've had boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, wives fight on the same card. Like there's so many moments. It'd be impossible if we name them all. So I'm sorry I can't give you a better answer, but that's probably all you're getting from me.
Nah, you're good, man. But to follow up on those responses, though, man, like you're saying about a 59-year-old that actually just got his first win, right? Tell us a little bit about that, right? Because obviously that video went viral, and like everyone just saw that he was a 59-year-old, got his first win, but they didn't realize he has so many more years of experience. So tell us about a little bit, how was it trying to get him sanctioned to like fight, and obviously everything that transpired after that.
Yeah, man, it was very difficult because I'm going to be honest. Like my fight is bigger than, I love that we helped John Payne, but just as much as it was about John Payne, it's about what we do here at Cage Titans. I don't care if you're the next UFC star or a first timer or a guy who's having a bucket list or a guy who's never going to go pro and only fight as an amateur. Every single fighter on that card is important to me, and you all have a place. I had that fight with the commission. Hey, listen, I'm not trying to say that I'm the UFC. I'm not trying to say this is, John Payne or his opponent or whoever is going to be the next UFC fighter. That's not what my job is to do. My job is to put evenly matched fights to the best of my ability. I said, and whether you're good or bad has no relevance in that, besides the fact that I got to try to match you accordingly. Age doesn't matter to me. Like with John Payne, they were putting up a lot of roadblocks. And, I see a guy who was 0-3. He competed early in his career over 10, 12, 13, 14 years ago, and he was thrown to the wolves by promoters, and he got smoked in his first couple fights. And then he found a real gym, and he started training with Joe Lozon, and Joe Lozon came to me with his name. Who else am I going to question if besides Joe Lozon? Who above Joe Lozon am I going to question if this guy is capable of competing and protecting himself? That was good enough for me.
Yep.
And then the commission's putting up more roadblocks. I'm like, well, do you know more than Joe Lozon? Have you been in the gym with this guy? Have you seen him training for the last 12 years? Yes, he's older. But then what more do you need? We know we have medical testing. He sought out the head of the medical advisory board, Dr. Warner, and had all his testing done with the head of the medical advisory board, and he cleared him. And he even said he's more fit than some of the younger guys fighting. John Payne was a firefighter. He is a firefighter, so like he's obviously physical fit. But then so what more can you ask for? People, they actually asked me, the commission said, can you just let this go? And I'm like, no, I'm not letting it go. This is about this guy's moment, this guy's time. He deserves an opportunity. And I don't have any other thoughts that I'm the next Bellator or UFC. I am there for Cage Titans and our community and our fans. And this guy wants an opportunity to compete. So I'm going to fight tooth and nail to make sure he can compete. And I just said the word fight. We're fighters too. I'm going to fight for this guy. So, then next up came the matchup, and they were like, well, this guy's 20 years old, younger. And it's like, okay, well, we have weight classes, not age classes. Well, okay, well, I've been matching fights for 12 years. I'm the longest tenured matchmaker in the state, most respected. You've come to me in the past asking about other promotions matchups to give my opinion on it. You obviously respect my opinion. I've been doing it long enough. I don't have any marks on my record or anything like that. Do you need somebody else to come in above me to say this fight's good? Do you know the training regimen of both fighters and all this stuff? So it was a little bit of a hassle, but we were able to pull it off. We appeared before the commission. And, John Payne hugged me afterwards. He's like, thank you for fighting so hard to make this happen. Then he ends up going out and winning. And a lot of things, like, again, when we go back to that age, do you play any sports, like, besides, do you do any sports?
Yeah, so I played football growing up. So like
Okay, so
nowadays, I
football.
train jiu-jitsu and boxing.
Yeah. So football, there might be a 40-year-old. Oh, Tom Brady's a good example, I guess. Like, because we're New England, he's 40, whatever he is, and it's like, can he compete against these 20-year-olds? Yeah. The younger guys, and when I was trying to break down this fight, it's like, okay, well, this guy who's younger than him has less experience. He's more full of piss and vinegar, so he's going to be a couple. That's another on his scale. More. I got the scales, and that's how I kind of make match fights. John has more training, but he's older. All right, more training, but he's older. So it's like here. And this guy, less training, but he's younger. And so now the scales start going like this. And, and I brought up your football because you played football. It's like there's quarterbacks that are 44 years old, and they're like, well, they make up for their deficiencies on the physical side because of their knowledge in the sport and the length they've been training. And I had to bring that out to these guys. I played hockey, and after I graduated high school, I played in some men's leagues, and it was like these teams that were like 40-year-old guys smoking me and my 19-year-old buddies. Yeah. And it's like, we're skating circles around these guys, but they had the knowledge. They knew when to exert their energy, when not to. They had all these things that 20 plus years that we didn't have of knowledge in their head. And they were able to take us out and beat us. When we, on paper, you'd be like, these guys are half their age. They're faster. They're quicker. They hit harder. They do this. But we find ourselves on a losing effort. So I had to bring that to their attention as well. So that's kind of how that fight came to fruition. And I'm glad it did, because it was a great moment, for John Payne. And I think the commission got it right. That's more important. They got it right. And I'm happy it happens.
Yeah, such an awesome moment. But sorry to put you on the spot, but he, after it kind of seemed like he wanted another one. Do you think it might happen, or hey, it's a wait and see type of deal?
I think that Joe Lozon immediately was like, hell no, we're not going through this again. I kind of talked to him afterwards. He's like, one more. And I'm like, it's also the perfect storm. Let's not like get it twisted.
Yeah.
That like John Payne could have went in there and fought anybody at 135. It was analyzing the right opponent. We saw his opponent fight before. Joe Lozon saw his opponent fought before. So we kind of knew a little bit of what we were getting with this type of matchup. If I get an 0-0, I wouldn't comfortably put an 0-0 there against John Payne, because he could be the next, John Jones. He could be a good fight for him, but he could be the next John Jones. It's too much of a variable there that we wouldn't put a 59-year-old guy in there to compete against him. So it would kind of have to be the perfect storm. Like, I wasn't asking for approval for John Payne to fight anybody and everybody we put in front of the commission,
Yeah.
I was asking for this specific matchup, and I think that's what helped propel it. If there's another fight that we see in the future, I'm sure Joe Lozon will call me up and be like, "Hey, listen, man, John Payne's been up my ass. We saw a guy on your last card at 135, 140. I don't know if he'll win or lose because that's important. It's not like, hey, he's going to smoke this guy. Hey, I don't know if he's going to win or lose, but I'd feel comfortable putting him in there against that guy. And then I analyze it from my end and say, you know what, you're right. So who knows? Never say never. But I think it's best to ride off into the sunset sometimes. But us fighters, we never know when's enough. So who knows? We'll see.
Yeah, yeah. So we'll see. But hey, man, now to switch gears a little bit, right? Look into the future. Like I mentioned right off the bat, August 27th, you have your next event, Cage Titans 255. And I just spoke to one of your champions, right? Joe Giannetti, lightweight champion, and he said he's fighting on the card. So, if anything, can you just break some news with us and say some of the fights that are happening on that card?
Yeah. So you had Joe, our lightweight champion, Ultimate Fighter veteran. He's jumping up to 170, and he's going for the champ status. He's taking on Trevor Goody, Bellator vet, and he's a guy that was he won our welterweight title as an amateur, and he also he defended his welterweight title as an amateur, and it's kind of cool because Joe was the first ever fighter to hold our amateur lightweight title and then go on to become a pro and win the pro lightweight title. Now Trevor's trying to go for that opportunity, be the first fighter to win the welterweight amateur title and go on and win the pro title. And Joe's trying to be the first ever Cage Titans champ, where he wins 2 belts under our promotion. Now, the fun thing about this fight is, I don't know if it was on our radar, but when Joe's opponent pulled out for the second show in a row back in July, a short list of people were kind of reached out to, and Trevor's name got floated at us, and because Joe was like, I'll fight 55, 70, whatever. And Trevor's name came up, and Joe's like, absolutely, let's do it. I just need to fight. I want to stay active. I need to stay active. Let's do it. And then when I went to Trevor, he runs a summer camp back in his home state of Missouri, and it hasn't gone off since COVID. So that week of the fight, he's like, I love the opportunity to fight JoJo, but unfortunately, like, we're trying to get this camp off the ground. And if we don't pull it off this year, all the hard work I did for all the years prior to COVID, it's never going to happen again. And I have to put my effort into this camp. So he had declined, but he said, I'll fight him in August if he still wants to. Now, my thought was, all right, I still got to focus on Joe, get him a July 2nd fight. And I figured Joe was going to say to me, I was going to fight Trevor just at one because of the short notice. Right before the fight, I'm at weigh-ins, and JoJo's just like, hey, after I take out this guy, I'm still on for Trevor in August. And I was like, oh, I didn't think you wanted to do that. And he's like, no, I'm in. He's like, can we announce it after I beat this guy? And I'm like, well, why don't you focus on tomorrow and get your win, and then we'll go. And we were running short on time, so we didn't do any post-fight interviews. So he didn't get the chance to announce it. And then, like, the next day, he's like, is it still on? I'm like, yep. And I hit up Trevor, and Trevor's like, yep, I'm down for this fight. And I think this is a great fight. They're 2 Cage Titans legends that have been around almost their entire careers with Cage Titans. Trevor, his entire amateur career and all but 2 of his pro fights have been with us. JoJo, he's all his amateur fights except for one. Then most of his pro career, all the way up until he got to the UFC, was with us. Since he's got cut and he's making his way back, he's had 2 fights with LFA, but all his other fights have been with us. So they're 2 guys that Cage Titans fans know. Easily recognize. They're 2 of the most recognizable Cage Titans faces. You put Trevor's face up right now, they're like, oh yeah, that's a Scarecrow. You see JoJo, Skeletor. So I think this is a fun fight, and it's going to have a lot of people divided. That's what's great about this. A lot of times of late, we've been bringing fighters in from out of state, and we do our best job to tell the story of the out of state fighter to our fans, so they know why this is a real challenge for the hometown guy. And we want to make sure that it's just not like, oh, this is another guy coming in from out of state to lose to our hometown guy. Like, no, these are real threats here. The fun thing about this fight, I don't have to sell this fight. There's already talks because all the Cage Titans fans know both guys. They both know their styles for both guys. They've been around for a long time. So the Cage Titans fans are going to be torn on like which way does this fight go? Who's going to win? Like there's going to be a lot of question marks that need answering, and we're going to find out on August 27th.
Yeah, man. Like you kind of said it there, man. I'm already looking forward to. 'Cause, I mean, both of these fighters have big fan bases too, so I can only imagine how loud is it gonna get in there. But yeah, man. So like, we got that fight. So what are some other fights that? Because I saw that tickets went on the day that we're recording
Yeah,
today. Tickets went on sale today. So what
yeah.
other fights
So
can we expect on there?
so I'm excited to announce that we actually just solidified Bruno Jacare Diaz taking on Lionel Boogs Young. They were supposed to fight in June. Then Lionel had an issue come up, so he had to pull out. Then they were going to fight in July, and Bruno had an issue. Then there was a lot of back and forth. Like they were very angry at each other. You pulled out on me. Well, I pulled out on you, and then like they were going back and forth, and it looked like they just weren't going to fight. And they were kind of both pissed, but cooler heads prevailed, and we finally got that fight solidified. That will be our co-main event for August 27th. Both guys have lost to the party. Joe Penafiel, who's our bantamweight champion, both have been dying to get the opportunity to rematch him. So I can't speak 100%, but the looks of that would be, whoever wins this fight could definitely demand a rematch. So that's another fun fight for our co-main event. So you heard it here first officially. Another fun one, Tyler Butterknife Smythe from Evolution Athletics up in Maine. He won our flyweight championship last event. He's jumping up in weight class to go to 135 and taking on the bantamweight champ, the amateur ranks, Arthur Mopofu, which should be another fun fight because Arthur was teammates with Joe Poirier, who Tyler Smythe beat for the belt. The other interesting angle of that, so maybe a little bit of revenge. The other interesting cool thing about this is Arthur just tried to go become a champ. He came up a little short in the decision, so now he's defending his title. So now he has the opportunity to prevent somebody from, becoming the champ. That's an interesting storyline. We talked about brothers, sisters, all that stuff. We got identical twins. The Layton brothers are back. Brett and Brandon Layton returning to Cage Titans for the first time since COVID. That's always kind of a fun story angle when you got identical twins fighting on the cards. A sleep fight on the amateur ranks. Josh Smith is returning from Nostos. He's taking on Shane Delahaye. Shane Delahaye just came up short for our welterweight title against Jack Congdon, and he wants to push himself right back up to title contention. And he feels that he really didn't get to show his full arsenal of weapons. And Josh Smith is just a juggernaut out of Nostos. These two guys are going to hit head on in the cage, and it's going to be an amazing fight.
Man, I'm looking forward to it, man. Man. So, like, what's for all the fans watching, right? Where can they find tickets? I mean, where can they watch the stream if they can't, show up live?
Yep.
And yeah, man, if you can you plug in all your social media so everyone watching
Yeah.
and go and follow you guys.
I appreciate it. So yeah, obviously, Cage Titans at Cage Titans across the board. You were on social media, on Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, Snapchat, YouTube. It's at Cage Titans across the board. We're super active on our social media. I think that's another thing, that separates us is that we do a great job of pushing our fighters and pushing out content. So follow us on all our social media platforms. Cage Titans FC, Cage Titans Fighting Championship. So CageTitansFC.com is our website. You can get your tickets from there. And you can also check out the live stream on Fight Night. If you know a fighter, hit up your fighter directly. Tickets will be in all the fighters' hands by this weekend. So you can just hit up your favorite fighter, Venmo him, meet up with him, whatever you got to do. Some of these fighters, especially amateurs, I say it all the time, they're not paid to do this. They're doing this because they love it. And it's not because I'm an asshole that just doesn't want to pay these guys. It's against the law to pay amateurs. So the only way they make a little bit of money to help fund their medicals and training expenses is by selling tickets because they get a small percentage. They get a good percentage of that. So if you can get it from a fighter, grab it from a fighter. If not, you can always go to our website.
Yeah, 100%, man. So, Mike, thanks again, man. Thanks again for the time. Hopefully, we can do it again in the future. And hey, guys, August 27th, Columbus Memorial Hall. Make sure you get your tickets. If not, buy the stream. So again, thanks to everyone and to everyone watching. Peace.